Mark had always loved making people laugh, ever since high school. He was the class clown, the kind of person who would tie his shoelaces together just to make his friends giggle. As he grew older, that love for jokes didn't fade. Instead, it grew into something bigger. He bought a camera, started recording silly videos, and created a YouTube channel where he uploaded his pranks and funny moments. Slowly, he gained a following. Nothing too huge, but enough to make him feel like a small internet star. His viewers loved his cheerful energy and his crazy ideas. They waited every week for something new. When Mark and his 3 best friends decided to travel to Europe during their spring break, he immediately thought of all the content he could create. He made a list of funny things he could try in each city: dancing with strangers in Paris, singing loudly in Rome, doing magic tricks in Amsterdam. But one city stood out more than the others: London. Not because of the Big Ben or the London Eye, but because of the royal guards at Buckingham Palace. Mark had seen videos of them tall, serious soldiers with bright red coats and black furry hats. They stood like statues, completely still, no matter what happened around them. People would try to make them laugh or flinch, but they never moved. That made them perfect, Mark thought. A great challenge for a funny video. As the plane landed at Heathrow Airport on March 30th, Mark was already buzzing with excitement. He kept telling his friends about the prank he was planning. He said it was going to be harmless and fun, just a little joke for April Fool's Day. "Come on," he laughed. "It's not like I'm hurting anyone. It's just for fun. Everyone does it." His friends weren't as sure. Jake, his oldest friend, warned him, "Man, those guards are soldiers. What if they react?" Mark waved it off. "They don't. That's the whole point. They're trained not to move." "I've seen it online 100 times, still," said Rachel. "This isn't like pranking your neighbor. This is someone's real job." But Mark didn't listen. In his mind, it was already planned. He had packed a few simple props for the prank: a rubber chicken, fake mustache, and a small toy trumpet that made a squeaky noise. He thought he would try each one in front of the guard and see if he could get a smile. Just a smile. That was all he wanted. He imagined the guard trying not to laugh, the crowd giggling, the video going viral. It would be harmless, just a quick moment of humor. He even practiced his lines in the mirror of the hotel room the night before. April 1st arrived, cold and cloudy, like many London mornings. Mark woke up early and put on a bright blue jacket so he would stand out on camera. He checked the batteries in his camera, made sure the SD card had space, and packed his prank props carefully in his backpack. His friends followed along, still unsure, but they didn't want to ruin his excitement. They arrived outside Buckingham Palace just after 9 a.m. The place was already full of tourist families, school groups, and travelers from all over the world. People were taking selfies, pointing at the guards, whispering to each other about how serious they looked. The guards stood like statues, their eyes forward, their hands firmly gripping their rifles. They didn't even blink. Mark couldn't wait. He handed the camera to Jake, told him to start recording, and took a deep breath. He walked confidently toward one of the guards posted near the gates. The guard was tall, with sharp features and a perfect stance. He looked straight ahead, as if nothing in the world could distract him. Mark took out the rubber chicken and held it in front of the guard's face. He squeaked it twice. Nothing. The guard didn't move, didn't even glance. Mark smiled and turned to the camera. "See? Like a statue." Next, he wore the fake mustache and made silly faces next to the guard. Still nothing. A few tourists nearby chuckled and took photos. Mark was enjoying the attention. He took out the toy trumpet and gave it a loud honk. Again, silence from the guard. Mark danced a little, making clown-like moves. A small crowd began to gather, some filming with their phones. They thought it was amusing, maybe even part of a show. Mark was loving it. The prank was going just as planned, but he wasn't done. He wanted a little more. He wanted something unexpected, something that would make the guard flinch or speak. That's when he made the mistake. He stepped a little closer than before. He looked around at the growing crowd, smiled big, and then slowly reached his hand toward the guard's tall black hat. It was just a small gesture, almost playful. like he was going to poke it gently and step back. What Mark didn't know was that the guards were trained not only to stand still, but also to protect their post. Touching a guard or even pretending to was a serious offense. This time, the guard didn't stay still. In one sharp motion, the guard took a step forward and shouted in a deep, loud voice, "Stand back from the Queen's Guard." Sound was sudden and powerful. It echoed off the palace walls and shocked everyone in the crowd. Mark jumped back, his heart racing. The guard took another step forward, lifting his rifle slightly, not aiming, but showing he was not just there for decoration. His face remained serious, almost emotionless, but his presence had completely changed. He was no longer a quiet figure in a red coat. He was a soldier doing his duty. People gasped. Some backed away. A little girl began to cry. Mark froze, unable to believe what had just happened. This wasn't funny anymore. This wasn't a prank. His plan had gone from lighthearted to dangerous in 1 second. Jake lowered the camera, his mouth open in shock. The guard returned to his position. Eyes forward, still and strong once again. But the moment had changed everything. Mark turned to his friends, confused and scared. He tried to laugh it off, but the people around him weren't smiling anymore. Some were whispering angrily. A few tourists shook their heads in disapproval. One man muttered, "Disrespectful." Others said, "He deserves to be thrown out." Suddenly, 2 uniformed palace security officers appeared. They walked directly toward Mark and asked him to step aside. Mark tried to explain it was a joke, an April Fool's prank, nothing serious. "It's just for a video," he said, pointing at the camera. But the officers weren't smiling either. One of them told him calmly but firmly that touching or interfering with a royal guard was a serious offense under UK law. They asked for his ID and told him he might have to be taken in for questioning. Mark's face turned pale. His heart pounded as they led him away from the palace gates. The camera stopped recording. The crowd slowly returned to normal, but the energy had changed. The cheerful morning had turned into something else. His friends followed him at a distance, not sure what to say. Mark had thought he was going to get a few laughs, it imagined. A viral video, new followers, funny comments. But what he got instead was fear, shame, and the possibility of legal trouble in a foreign country. He didn't know what was going to happen next. But one thing was clear, this prank was no joke. And so, what began as a fun April Fool's plan, filled with laughter and excitement, had now turned into the start of a serious lesson. A lesson about respect, culture, and knowing when a joke stops being funny. Mark sat in a small office behind the palace, waiting. His heart was beating fast and his hands were cold. Kept thinking, why did I touch the guard's hat? Why didn't I just stop after the trumpet? But there was no way to change what had happened. What was supposed to be a funny, harmless prank had turned serious. 2 security officers had taken his ID, asked him many questions, and told him to sit while they made a report. Mark wasn't in handcuffs or locked in a cell, but the tension. And the room felt heavy. His friends waited outside the palace grounds, worried and silent. Jake had turned off the camera and deleted part of the recording when security told him. Rachel kept checking her phone, trying to find out what could happen to someone who messes with a royal guard. She couldn't find much online. But everything she did find made her feel worse. People who had gotten too close to the guards in the past had been fined, banned, or even arrested. Some were just tourists like Mark, people who didn't realize how serious the rules were. After almost an hour, a man in a suit entered the room where Mark sat. He introduced himself politely and said he was from the palace's legal and public safety office. He didn't shout or act angry. In fact, his voice was calm but firm. He asked Mark to explain everything again, from the idea to the planning, to the moment he reached toward the guard. Mark told him the truth. He said it was for a YouTube video, just a joke for April Fools, and he didn't mean any harm. The man nodded but didn't smile. He explained to Mark that the royal guards are not actors or part of a show. They are real soldiers from the British Army, trained to protect important places, and even though they stand still most of the time, they are allowed to defend themselves in their post. Touching them or pretending to touch them is not just disrespectful. It's a breach of royal protocol. Mark listened quietly, his excitement from the morning completely gone. The man continued and said they were not going to arrest him, but the incident would be recorded, and depending on how serious it was seen by the authorities, he might face a fine or a temporary travel ban to UK royal sites. Mark apologized again and again. He promised he would never post the video, even offered to delete the entire file in front of them. The man nodded and told him that would be appreciated. After another short wait, the officers returned, handed him back his ID, and said he was free to go for now, but they told him to be careful. "This is not something we take lightly," one of them said. "People come from around the world to see the royal guards. Expect respect." Mark walked out the gate slowly. Didn't wave or smile at the guards this time. He didn't even look at them. His friends stood up when they saw him and hurried to him. "What did they say?" Jake asked quickly. "Are you okay?" Mark just nodded. "Yeah, no jail, but it's bad. I might get fined or banned." Rachel put a hand on his shoulder. "Let's just go. You need a break." They walked away from Buckingham Palace without saying much. The air felt heavy. The fun, adventurous mood they had in the morning was gone. They went back to their small hotel room and sat quietly. Mark looked at the camera and then slowly removed the SD card, placed it on the table and stared at it. That little memory. Card held the whole moment, one that could have ruined his trip, or worse. Jake spoke up after a long silence. "You're lucky, man. It could have been worse." Mark nodded. "I know. I was stupid. I didn't think." "You didn't mean to cause trouble," Rachel added. "But that doesn't make it okay. These guards aren't clowns. They have a real job." That night, Mark didn't upload anything. He didn't post on Instagram. He didn't check his messages. He just sat and thought. He remembered the guard's face. It hadn't been angry, but it had been serious. It was a face that carried responsibility, a job, a duty. And Mark had tried to turn that into entertainment. He remembered how the people around him had reacted too. Some laughed at first, but when he reached toward the guard's hat, the laughter turned into gasps. A child had started crying. An old woman had shaken her head in disappointment. In that 1 second, Mark had gone from being the funny guy to someone people were upset with. He felt ashamed. The next day, Mark and his friends had planned to visit the Tower of London, but he didn't feel like going. He stayed in the hotel room while the others went out. He spent the day reading about the history of the Royal Guards, watching real documentaries, learning how long their training took, how serious their duty was. They weren't just posing, they were protecting something old and important, something that had stood for centuries. He felt worse the more he read. In the afternoon, he opened his laptop and logged into his YouTube account. His most recent video had reached 50,000 views. It was a prank he did in Paris, where he danced in the middle of a quiet museum and got kicked out. People had laughed in the comments, called him fearless, funny, wild. He stared at the comments and felt nothing. Before, those words made him feel like a star. Now, they felt empty. Later that evening, his friends returned. They brought food and sat around talking quietly. Mark finally broke the silence. "I'm deleting the prank videos," he said. "All of them." Jake looked surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah," Mark replied. "They're not funny anymore. Not if someone gets hurt. Not if I'm hurting people just to make a video." He started deleting them one by one. Each title was a memory: scaring strangers in the park, pranking delivery drivers, fake tourist falls. They had thousands of views. But now, Mark felt none of it was worth it. When he reached the folder where the Royal Guard prank was saved, he didn't hesitate. He selected it, hit delete, and emptied the trash folder. It was gone. He looked at his friends. "I don't think I want to do pranks anymore." Rachel smiled. "Good. I think that's the right call." Jake nodded. "You're funny, man. You don't need to mess with people to show it." Mark thought a lot that night, about the guard, about the rules, about how easy it is to make mistakes when you're thinking about attention instead of respect. He remembered how the guard hadn't said anything cruel or loud after that first. Shout, just one strong command. Stand back from the Queen's Guard. That line kept repeating in his mind. not angry, just serious. Like a reminder that some things are bigger than jokes. The next morning, he posted something new. Not a video, just a message. Sometimes we cross the line without realizing it. I did something that wasn't okay. I want to say I'm sorry. To the guard, to the people watching, and to those I've pranked before. From now on, I'm doing better. No more fake laughs. Just real stories, real moments. Some people replied with support. Some didn't believe him. Some unsubscribed. But Mark didn't care. He knew this was a turning point. They finished the rest of their Europe trip quietly. No cameras, no pranks, just memories. They visited museums, tasted local food, talked to new people, and took real photos, not ones made for clicks, but ones to remember. And though Mark never saw that royal guard again, he never forgot him. That silent, still figure who taught him the biggest lesson of his life without saying more than a single sentence. The moment Mark reached his hand toward the royal guard's tall black hat, everything changed. His fingers had barely moved close when the guard suddenly shouted loud and powerful, "Stand back from the Queen's Guard!" Ow! It wasn't just a warning, it was a command. People around them froze. Some gasped, others stepped back. A small child standing near her mother began to cry. The playful mood disappeared like a flame blown out by the wind. Mark jumped back, his face pale, heart thumping wildly in his chest. He had never heard such a voice before, so strong, so serious. The guard, who had been silent and still just seconds ago, had now taken a step forward. His rifle, although not aimed, was raised in a way that showed he wasn't just there for decoration. Mark's legs felt weak. His arms hung stiff at his sides. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked around at the crowd. No one was laughing. In fact, many looked angry or disappointed. Jake, who was filming the prank, quickly lowered the camera. He didn't say anything. Rachel looked at Mark, her eyes wide with shock. She whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." Mark couldn't even speak. It was like time had stopped for a few seconds. Everyone stared at him. The guard, after making his point, returned to his post. Once again, he became perfectly still, like nothing had happened. But everyone knew something had changed. Within minutes, 2 uniformed security officers came walking toward them. They looked serious. One of them, tall and heavy-set, spoke first. "Sir, step this way, please." Mark didn't argue, just nodded and followed them. His friends tried to follow too, but the other officer held up his hand. Just him. "We'll speak with you later." They led Mark away from the palace gate, past the crowd, and into a small side building near the entrance. The walk felt long. Mark's stomach twisted with fear. He couldn't believe how fast things had turned. Bad. Just minutes ago, he had been smiling, dancing with a rubber chicken. Now he was being pulled away by officers. All he could think was, "I didn't mean to do anything wrong." Inside the building, Mark was asked to sit. One officer stood near the door. The other sat across from him and began asking questions. "What were you trying to do? Why did you reach for the guard? Do you understand how serious this is?" Mark tried to explain. His voice shook as he said it was just a prank, that it was April Fool's Day, that he didn't mean any harm. He told them he had seen videos online of people joking around with the guards, and he thought it was part of the tourist experience. The officer didn't look angry, but his eyes showed no sympathy. "Those videos," he said, "often don't show what happens after. Many of those people are fined. Some are arrested. You were lucky the guard didn't think you were trying to attack him." That sentence hit Mark hard. Attack. He hadn't even considered that. To him, it was just a joke.
Oh.
But now he realized how different it must have looked. A stranger moving his hand toward a soldier's head, of course that could be seen as dangerous. He suddenly saw it from the guard's eyes. He imagined being on duty, having to stay still for hours, being watched by hundreds of people. And then, out of nowhere, someone tries to touch you.
Oh.
That wasn't funny. That was threatening. The officer told him to stay seated while they checked the camera. Mark could hear his heart pounding in his ears. He felt sick, thought about his parents back home in Ohio, probably having breakfast or walking the dog. with no idea their son was sitting in a security office in London. What if they called the embassy? What if he couldn't leave the country? What if he got banned from the UK? After what felt like forever, the officers returned. They said they had reviewed the footage. They saw everything. They told him they would not be pressing charges, but a report would be made. He might receive a fine through email or mail after his trip. They asked him to delete the footage in front of them. Mark didn't argue. He took the SD card, inserted it into their computer, opened the folder, and deleted the video. The officer watched carefully. Mark then emptied the recycle bin. It was gone. "You're lucky," one officer said. "We deal with people who do worse, but we also deal with tourists who think this is all for show. It's not. These guards are trained military men. They carry real weapons. This is real duty." Mark nodded slowly. "I understand now," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. They gave him back his passport and his backpack. "You're free to go," they said. "But remember, this could have ended much worse. Be more careful. And tell your friends, too." Mark stepped out of the small building and back into the street. He felt the cold wind hit his face. It made him shiver, but it also cleared his mind. Jake and Rachel were waiting across the street, and they saw him. They ran over. "What happened?" Rachel asked R. "You okay?" Jake added. "I'm fine," Mark said, though he didn't really feel fine. "They let me go, but it's serious. I could get fined. Maybe even banned from royal sites." He paused. "I deleted the video." Jake looked surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah," Mark said. "It wasn't right. I see that now." They walked back toward the hotel, quiet for most of the way. Mark didn't look at the palace again. He didn't take out his phone. He didn't check his YouTube channel. All he could think about was the guard's voice. Just 5 words: "Stand back from the Queen's Guard." But those 5 words had changed. Everything at the hotel, he sat on the bed and thought about how lucky he was. If the guard had reacted more strongly, if the officers had been stricter, if someone in the crowd had misunderstood, anything could have happened. It could have been worse. It's much worse. He also thought about his channel. For years he had been chasing laughs. Every week, he came up with wild ideas just to get more views. He had dressed like a dinosaur in a shopping mall. He had placed fake spiders in public bathrooms. He had scared old ladies with popping balloons, and he had laughed through it all. But now none of it felt funny. He opened his laptop and stared. At the homepage of his YouTube channel, the bright banner, the smiling face, the playlist of pranks, it all looked different now. He clicked on one video called "Scaring Tourists in Times Square." In it, he had jumped out from behind a trash can and made 2 women scream. At the time, he thought it was hilarious. But now, watching their frightened faces, he felt ashamed. He closed the laptop and sat back. His friends were talking quietly. In the room, Rachel was checking train tickets. Jake was texting someone. Mark stared at the ceiling. His mind was full of thoughts. Later that evening, he made a decision. Stood up and said, "I don't want to make prank videos anymore." Looked up. "Really?" Mark nodded. "Yeah, I messed up today. And not just because I got in trouble. It's because I finally saw what I've been doing. I've been laughing at people, not with them. That's not who I want to be." Rachel smiled. "That's good. I'm proud of you." Mark felt lighter. After saying it, like he had taken off a heavy jacket he didn't know he was wearing, for the first time in a long time, he felt real. That night, before sleeping, he wrote a long post. He didn't post it yet, but he saved it. In the message, he apologized to the guard, to the people watching, and to anyone he had ever made feel uncomfortable in his videos. He promised to do better. Not just to avoid trouble, but because he had changed. The next day, they visited a museum. No cameras, no tricks, just walking and learning. Mark looked at the paintings, the history, the quietness of the space. He felt calm. He didn't need to shout or perform. It was enough just to be present. And every time he thought about Buckingham Palace, he didn't think about the prank. He thought about the guard, strong, silent, serious, and the lesson he had taught without even moving. except when it truly mattered. Mark couldn't sleep the night after the prank. He kept turning in bed, staring at the ceiling of the small hotel room. The sounds of the city outside were quiet now, but his mind was loud. The same 5 words kept repeating in his head, "Stand back from the Queen's Guard." That voice had cut through his excitement like a knife. It wasn't just loud, it was real, powerful, like it had come from someone who meant every word with full responsibility. That one moment had changed everything. His YouTube channel had been his life for the last 3 years. He worked hard on every prank, traveled city to city, spending money, time, and energy to build a name for himself. Gained followers, made people laugh, and even started getting small payments from ads and sponsorships. For a while, it felt like he was doing something special. He thought making people laugh was always a good thing. But now he saw it differently. Making people laugh by disturbing others, by taking risks without thinking, wasn't harmless. It was careless. It was selfish. The next morning, he didn't check his social media, which was unusual for him. Every morning before, he would check views, comments, likes, and respond to fans. This time, he left his phone on the table and didn't touch it. His friends noticed. Rachel asked gently, "You okay?" Mark nodded. "Yeah, I just need time to think." Later, they all sat together and talked seriously. Mark told them what the officers had said. That the prank wasn't just a simple mistake. It was something that could have turned into a bigger problem. The Royal Guards weren't actors or props for entertainment. They were real people doing a real job. They were there to protect the palace, the royals, and the country's image. It wasn't just about laughing or views anymore. It was about respect. "I just feel like I crossed a line," Mark said, staring down at his hands. "I didn't even realize it until it was too late." Jake leaned back in the chair and sighed. "Honestly, I didn't think it was that serious either, not at first. But seeing the guards shout like that, and the way the crowd reacted, yeah, it hit me too." Rachel nodded. "It's easy to forget how serious things are when we're holding a camera." Mark looked out the window. The sky was gray. It matched how he felt inside. "I think I need to stop doing this kind of content," he said. His friends supported him. They didn't argue or try to change his mind. They just told him they were proud he was learning from the mistake. That night, Mark opened his laptop and logged into his channel again. It's time not just to delete videos, but to make changes. He rewrote his entire channel description, removed the old banner that said "Crazy Pranks Weekly," and replaced it with something new. Real stories. Real people, respect first. It felt strange, but also right. He didn't care about losing followers. He just wanted to do the right thing. But the real surprise came the next morning. Rachel was scrolling through her phone when she gasped. "Mark, look." She turned the screen toward him. It was a news article. "Tourist tries April Fool's joke on Royal Guard receives instant wake-up call." The article didn't name him directly, but it showed a blurry photo of the prank, probably taken by someone in the crowd. The story had already been shared hundreds of times. People in the comments were talking about another disrespectful tourist, saying how people had forgotten to show manners in historic places. Mark felt his stomach drop. "It's everywhere already?" Jake looked up from his phone too. "Yeah, it's all over Twitter. Even a few travel blogs are talking about it." Mark knew this was going to happen. The moment he saw people recording in the crowd, he had a bad feeling. How it was true. It was being talked about, but not in the way he wanted. The comments were harsh. Many people said it was disrespectful. Some called for him to be banned from the country. A few recognized his YouTube handle and mentioned it. That's when the messages started coming in. His phone, which he had ignored for 2 days, began buzzing with notifications. Some were from followers who were confused or disappointed. Others were from people who didn't follow him at all, but were sending angry messages. Mark's inbox was full of mixed emotions. Some fans told him they couldn't support him anymore. Others begged him to apologize publicly. A few were rude, sending insults and threats. For a while, Mark just stared at his phone. Then he put it down and walked out onto the hotel balcony. The air was cold, and the streets were noisy with buses and footsteps, but he felt alone. He had always wanted to be known. He had chased fame, even if it was small. But now that he was getting attention for the wrong reason, he didn't want it anymore. Rachel joined him on the balcony. "You know," she said quietly, You could use this to do something good." He looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "You're already being talked about," she said. "You can't stop that. You can control what you do next. You can show people that you understand, that you've changed, that you're not making excuses." Mark thought about it. She was right. He couldn't make the video disappear from the internet. He couldn't stop people from sharing their opinions, but he could speak his truth. He could take responsibility. So that afternoon, he set up the camera in their hotel room. This time, he didn't wear a costume. He didn't use funny music or flashy titles. He sat in front of the camera, wearing a plain shirt, and looked straight into the lens. He took a deep breath and began. "My name is Mark," he said, "and I made a mistake." The video was raw and real. It explained exactly what happened at Buckingham Palace. He told his viewers how he planned the prank, how he thought it was funny, and how quickly everything turned serious. He talked about the guard's shout, the reaction from the crowd, the way the officers treated him, and how ashamed he felt afterward. He admitted that he had never thought about the responsibility the guards had or what it meant to disrespect them. "I thought I was being harmless," he said in the video. "But I wasn't. I disrespected someone doing their job. I embarrassed myself. And I set a bad example for anyone who watches my videos." He paused often, not for drama, but because the words were hard to say. At the end of the video, he said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want people to learn from what I did. Think before you act. Respect the places you visit. And never forget that behind every uniform is a real person." He posted the video with the title, "I'm sorry." Within hours, the video was being shared. Not by people laughing, but by people surprised at how honest he was. Some still criticized him. Some still left angry comments. But others thanked him. Some said, "We all mess up. Owning it takes courage." Others wrote, "You've earned my respect more now than ever." The media picked it up again. Same blogs that had written about the prank updated their stories. Headlines changed to things like, "Tourist apologizes after Royal Guard incident says." He's done with pranks. Mark didn't feel proud, but he did feel relief. He had told the truth. He had stopped hiding. He had taken the first step to being better. When they returned to the United States, Mark continued making videos. But they were different now. He focused on travel stories, local cultures, and real people. He interviewed bus drivers in Rome, cafe owners in Paris, and small shopkeepers in New York. He talked about the beauty of learning from mistakes. His audience changed. Some old followers left, but new ones came. People who wanted something deeper than pranks. The prank at Buckingham Palace never disappeared. It was still on some websites. People still brought it up sometimes. But now, when they did, they also talked about the apology, the change, the lesson. And Mark never forgot the guard. He never forgot the power of 5 words, or the way one moment could change a life. Mark's life had changed completely since that day at Buckingham Palace. The prank that started as a fun joke for April Fool's Day had turned into a serious lesson he would never forget. After posting his heartfelt apology video, Mark received a mix of responses. Some people were angry and said he was disrespectful. Others appreciated his honesty and said it took courage to admit his mistake. Mark knew that he couldn't please everyone, but for the first time, he didn't care. He wanted to be better, not popular. After returning to the United States, Mark began thinking deeply about the kind of person he wanted to be and the kind of content he wanted to create. For years, he had focused on pranks and funny videos, chasing views and likes. But now, he realized that the way he chased attention had caused harm, even if he didn't mean it. His experience taught him that respect and kindness mattered more than temporary fame. Slowly, Mark started changing his YouTube channel. Instead of pranks, he began sharing real travel stories. He showed the beauty of different cultures, the kindness of strangers, and the small moments that made traveling special. He interviewed people he met on the road, like an elderly cafe owner in Paris who told him stories about her family, or a street artist in Rome who painted colorful pictures for children. Mark realized that real stories, honest moments, and respect made his videos more meaningful. His audience changed too. Some old fans who loved the pranks left, but new viewers arrived, people who wanted to learn, explore, and feel connected. Mark felt proud of this new community. It wasn't about fake laughs anymore. It was about sharing real life. Months later, Mark was invited to speak at a small conference about responsible travel and online content creation. At the event, he shared his story, explaining how his April Fool's prank went wrong and what he learned from it. The audience listened carefully as he described the moment the guard shouted, "Stand back from the Queen's Guard." He talked about the consequences, the embarrassment, and most importantly, the lesson of respect. People applauded his honesty. Mark felt grateful to be able to help others avoid the same mistakes. Sometimes when Mark thought about that day, he felt a little sadness mixed with gratitude. Sadness for the mistake he made, but gratitude for the way it changed him. He knew he was lucky that the guard had handled the situation calmly, that the officers hadn't been harsher, and that he could turn the experience into a positive lesson. Mark also stayed in touch with Rachel and Jake, his friends who had been with him throughout the trip. They supported each other and talked often about how much they had grown. Rachel reminded him once, "You've done something important, showing people that mistakes are okay, but owning up to them is what really matters." Mark agreed. He knew this was only the beginning of his new journey. As the years passed, Mark continued traveling and sharing stories with kindness and respect. He never forgot the silent guard who stood tall that April morning, teaching him a lesson without saying more than a single sentence. Mark often thought about how sometimes the hardest lessons come in unexpected ways. What started as a joke ended up shaping his life for the better, and that Mark knew was no joke at all.